I gave them 30 years, never missed a day. Trained 3 different bosses, covered for their mistakes, built systems they still rely on today. And 1 week, just 7 days, before I was supposed to retire with everything I'd earned, they fired me. No warning, no handshake, just a deactivated badge. And silence. But what they didn't know was, I kept receipts. Literal ones. If you've ever been loyal, only to be discarded like you didn't matter, this story's for you. Let me tell you what happened after they locked me out. Before it all fell apart, my life was steady, not flashy, not filled with medals or claps on the back, but honest, predictable, quiet. I woke up at 5:10 every morning, not because I had to, but because I liked to be early. Liked the way the office looked when no one else was there. Liked how the light hit the blinds just as the sun started rising. I'd get there before the coffee machines were done warming up. Fill that old gray mug with the chipped handle, the one that said work hard in silence. Same mug for 27 years. My wife tended the front yard, always in that faded green sun hat. Every Sunday morning, we'd sit on the porch with toast and black coffee. No cream. She knew when my bones ached. She knew how I carried things, and never said much. At work I wasn't the loudest in the room, but when something broke, I was the one they called. When a file went missing, I'd find it. When the server crashed, when deadlines crept too close, when the new guys froze during a pitch, I was there. Always. People came and went. Bright ideas, big egos, new suits every quarter. But I stayed. I trained half of them, cleaned up after all of them, and through it all, I never asked for more. Didn't chase titles. Didn't demand raises. I just did my job. 30 years of early mornings, late emails, quiet fixes, and a little hope that when it was finally my time, they'd see me off with dignity. I wasn't expecting a parade, but maybe a thank you, a smile, a handshake in the break room, with a slice of cake. Just 7 days left. 7. There weren't many people in my life, but the ones I had, they meant everything. Putting a napkin in my lunchbox with a little scribble, sometimes just a heart, sometimes a joke from a crossword puzzle. And I believed her. Our daughter, Emma, she moved out to Seattle, calls every other Sunday. She says I'm quiet, that I don't say much, but she doesn't know how many voicemails I've saved from her, just to hear her voice when the house feels too still. I don't have many friends, never been the poker night type, but there was this one guy, Ron from purchasing. Big laugh, bigger heart. He used to slap my back and say, if you ever leave, James, this place is gonna burn down within a week. He meant. Then there's Alan, my boss. Used to be the intern I mentored. Now wears suits with labels I can't pronounce. He calls me Jim, even though he knows I hate it. Little things like that. You notice, I pointed out a missing figure. He cut me off, said, let the younger guys run with this one. Everybody laughed. So I laughed too, like I should have already packed up my coffee mug and left quietly. And then there was Dana in HR. Always polite. Too polite. The kind of person who overuses your name so you don't notice what they're not saying. Last week, she asked me if I had thought about winding things down early. I told her I had 7 days left. She smiled like that was funny. Looking back now, the signs were there. Smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Meetings I wasn't invited to. And the way Alan started calling me sir in front of the new hires. Like I was some museum piece. Maybe bought my wife that new oven she kept circling in catalogs. But it wasn't the check I was waiting for. It was something quieter. No messes. Just steady work. And I brought it all home. She never rolled her eyes. She never made me feel less than. But she just smiled, handed me a towel and said, as long as you're safe, you're right on time. And maybe somewhere deeper, it was about my father too. He told me once, a man doesn't need to be known, just remembered for doing right. And I held on to that. So small I thought maybe I was imagining it. The Monday before everything happened, I came in early like always, but my key card didn't work right away. Had to swipe it twice. The security guy joked, maybe they think you've been here too long. We both laughed, but my stomach tightened. Later that day, Alan walked by my desk. Didn't stop. Didn't nod. Didn't say morning, Jim, like he always did. Just kept walking. Eyes fixed ahead. Like I wasn't even sitting there. The Wednesday meeting, the one I've attended every week for 14 years, got rescheduled. No one told me. I only found out when I walked into the empty conference room and saw them across the hall, blinds half drawn. When I asked Dana in HR about it, she smiled a little too wide and said, oh, must have been a mix-up. So sorry about that, James. James, not Jim. Suddenly everyone was calling me James again, like they were keeping a distance. The one by my cubicle, it was gone. Just removed. No explanation. No email. A blank spot in the corner like it'd never been there. I wasn't listed under my own department. I told my wife about it that night. She said maybe it was just a systems update. Maybe they were cleaning house, reorganizing. I nodded, tried to believe her, and when I swiped in that morning, the turnstile paused, just long enough for me to feel like a stranger. Back when it was just a warehouse and a half-finished dream. Sat in fingerless gloves, typing out invoices, because the company couldn't afford real payroll software yet. No one asked me to. I just did it, because it needed doing. I'd work all day, then go sit at her hospital bed half the night. Come home, make Emma a sandwich, and do it all again the next day. And I remember Alan, back when he was just a kid, fresh out of college, couldn't tell a requisition form from a punch card. I stayed late with him for weeks, coaching him through projects, showing him how to not just look smart, but be dependable. I signed off on so many of his reports, tweaked them when they didn't make sense, fixed the typos before upper management saw them. He'd say, "Thanks, Jim. I'd be lost without you." And I believed him. And now my name was missing from the directory. Like I'd never been there at all. It was Friday morning, 7 days from the day I was supposed to retire. Same place I'd gone every year on my work anniversary. It was my little ritual, a quiet way of saying, thanks for letting me be part of something. Name not recognized. I thought maybe it was the network. Tried another station. Same thing. I walked down the hall. Didn't feel nervous. Not yet. Just confused. Like I hadn't just been erased from the system 5 minutes ago. Waiting for the part where he'd grin and say, "Kidding. Early send-off for the old man." But there was nothing. Pages of legal language and polite lies. A paragraph about a transition plan. Another about revoking pension eligibility due to early separation. No bonus. No final week. No celebration. Just closure. Without the dignity. I didn't yell. Didn't ask why. Didn't beg. I just stood up, looked at the man I trained, and said, "I hope you know what you just buried." He didn't respond. Just adjusted his tie. Dana looked down like the table had something worth reading. No speech. Just a smile, a signature and a locked account. I don't remember walking to the parking lot. I remember the air was cold, colder than usual, like the wind do something I didn't. Hands on the wheel, thumb rubbing the worn-down edge of the steering column, like it could tell me what to do. 30 years of waking up in the dark, of coming in early, staying late, missing birthdays, skipping barbecues, telling my daughter, maybe next weekend, all of it, for the wondering when loyalty stopped being currency, when experience became a liability, when men like me became invisible. I stared out at the lot at the same row I'd parked in since '99, and thought, so this is how it ends. Not with a bang, not even a whisper, just a quiet exit no one watched. Not because I was afraid, just didn't see the point in keeping score. Like the time Alan forgot to submit the vendor contracts before quarter close. Would have cost the company 6 figures. I stayed till 2 a.m. retyping invoices, forging timestamps, and walked them into legal myself, before the board arrived the next morning. He never told anyone, but he got the promotion. Said we didn't need the scandal. Said he had kids in college. You know what happened after that? Paul sent me a thank you card. Said I saved his family. That was the last I ever heard from him. She almost lost a major client by sending the wrong pricing sheet. I took the heat, told the execs it was my oversight. They docked my bonus that year. She went on to lead a department, because I believed in second chances, because I thought, maybe that kind of loyalty would come back around, that I'd sit on the porch for a few days, drink my coffee, and maybe this bitter taste would pass. But then, I got the envelope. It said, effective immediately, James Carter's position will be terminated on March 15th, 1 week prior to vesting eligibility. It wasn't a restructure. It wasn't budget cuts. It was a strategy. Filed the paperwork weeks before they even looked me in the eye. Make sure I don't make a scene. A loose end they wanted trimmed. After that, I got to work. I didn't yell, didn't storm back into that building, didn't call Alan, or Dana or anyone else. I didn't even tell my wife. Not yet. I just folded the memo, slid it into an old manila envelope, and put on a pot of coffee. There's a kind of calm that comes over you when you finally stop trying to be liked. When you stop hoping they'll do right by you, and you realize you're the only one who ever did. Receipts, backups, old emails printed out, and hole punched. Notes from meetings Alan never attended but signed off on anyway. Files with red flags I'd flagged, and they'd ignore. And 30 years of knowing how things really worked. I made 3 calls that day. Not angry, not desperate, just direct. First, an old friend from compliance. We hadn't talked since he left for a private firm. He owed me nothing, but he listened. Second, a lawyer, not the fancy kind. Someone quiet, precise. The kind who reads every footnote and doesn't ask dumb questions. Third, a journalist. Used to be one of my wife's night school students. Sharp kid, still owed her for letting him turn in late work. Said he had some interest in workplace ethics. And then I waited. Didn't rush. Didn't plot revenge like in the movies. Just lived my life. Went on morning walks. Paid the gas bill. Ate dinner in silence. Thought the silence meant defeat. But what they didn't understand is that silence can be a warning. It started the way it always does, quietly, like rain before the storm hits. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't warn them. Just made a few adjustments. Small one. I moved the rest of our savings into a new account. Different bank. One of those ones with no branch. Just a login and a PIN. No one else knows. Transferred ownership of the house. Not to my wife, but to a family trust. One they never saw coming. They dug into those old files. The ones with Alan's signatures on projects he never read. Expense reports with names that didn't match vendors. Reimbursements approved without receipts. Dozens of them. I printed what I needed. Scanned the rest. Tied it up with timestamps. Chains of custody. Witness notes. Everything you'd want in a quiet little ethics bomb. Every morning I'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, highlighting violations, like a man doing crosswords. My wife would ask what I was working on. I'd just smile and say cleaning up the past. I knew what days Alan talked fast and thought slow. I'd trained him, remember, one conversation about cost cutting, casual, careless, recorded. Another about payroll rebalancing, not illegal, but certainly unethical, certainly interesting to certain ears. And while I was doing all that, they were none the wiser. But sometimes, a missing piece just means something's moving beneath the floor. There was a night just before everything came to a head. I was sitting in the garage, halfway through organizing some old toolboxes, and I just stopped. The folder was still on the workbench, labeled, stacked, ready to go. Maybe I should have let them have it. Let them win. Let the story end the way they wanted me forgotten. Them rising. Would that have been easier? Even when you do it quietly. Even when you never raise your voice. It still lives in your chest. Still wakes you up at 3 a.m. asking, are you better now? But somewhere along the way, I started wondering if I was just trying to prove I mattered. Trying to scream without making a sound. In the end, he did what men like him always do. He celebrated too soon. He was front and center, arm around Dana from HR, captioned, here's to fresh leadership and smart restructuring. And below that, he wrote, sometimes progress means letting go of the past. The journalist I'd spoken to, the one my wife once taught, found it poetic, almost too poetic. He included it, word for word at the top of the article. The story went live on a Monday. Ethics violations, misuse of fund, improper restructuring to dodge pension obligations. That spread fast. Shareholders called emergency meetings. The board issued a statement, and by Friday, Alan was the one being walked out with a box in his hands. The bonus they denied me, paid, with interest. The pension, reinstated. The apology, public. But I never said a word. Not to him. Not to anyone. When it came, it didn't come with sirens. It came like a quiet storm paper, folded in half, a knock at the door, a name removed from a plaque. It started with the audit, one email to the board, with attachments they couldn't ignore, dates, figure, Alan's name beside all of them. Then came the letter from legal. Not just to him, but to the company. The pension clause, legally binding. My early termination, in breach of contract. By the end of the week, they had no choice but to settle. Every cent they thought they saved, by cutting me out, cost them 5 times more. I was at home on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the rain fall soft against the glass. When the transfer hit my account, I didn't smile, didn't cheer. I just whispered to myself, that'll do. I didn't go back, didn't return calls, didn't check the company news. But word travels, quieter than it used to, but it still gets around. Ron from purchasing called me, said the whole office froze when the article dropped. Said Dana from HR took a sabbatical. Said Alan's face turned so pale, they thought he'd pass out. No one said my name, not out loud, but they knew. But word follows men like him, especially when they sign things they didn't read. They're the ones who looked me in the eyes before it all happened, who smiled too wide, who watched me walk out, and said nothing. I'm not the same man who walked into that building 30 years ago, and I'm sure as hell not the one they walked out. Turns out the world forgets fast, unless you remind it who built the damn floor. There's a quiet that settles in after everything's over. Not peace exactly, not loneliness either, just stillness, like a door's closed behind you, and you're not going back to open it. Maybe she's right, or maybe I've just learned to stop holding my breath for people who never saw me coming. Because the man who gave them 30 years, finally kept something for himself. There's this mug, gray, chipped on the handle, says work hard in silence. I've had it since year 3. I used to keep it at my desk,
far corner next to the window no one liked, because the blinds never worked. I never moved it, even when they painted the walls, or swapped out chairs. That mug stayed. Said it wasn't on inventory. Like it didn't matter. Every early morning, and maybe that's the point. They can take the title, the paycheck, even the plaque I never got. But they didn't take the mug. They didn't take me. I never raised my voice. Never slammed a door. Never sent a warning shot. I just moved in silent. They thought they were burying a tired old man. What they didn't know was that I'd already mapped the way out. And when the truth came for them, it didn't need to shout. It just showed up. One file, one name, one cost too high to hide. My bonus, my dignity. But I also got something more valuable than all of it. A reminder, if you've ever been cut out after giving your all, if you've ever stayed quiet long enough to see how people really move, when they think you can't fight back, you're not alone, or just right. I worked in silence. But I didn't leave empty. That's enough. If this story stayed with you, if you believe quiet men still have powerful stories, I hope you'll subscribe. This is Revenge with James, where silence has a memory, and justice doesn't need to knock twice. I didn't even raise my voice, but I knew what I was doing.
I walked away with my name intact, but part of me still wonders if the man I used to be would have turned the other cheek, would have said, let it go, let them win. And maybe that man would have slept easier. Maybe he wouldn't feel the weight in his chest when the porch light's off and the coffee's gone cold. Of the men like me who don't fight back because they think they're not allowed to. Thought I'd sit in silence, fade out, but I didn't vanish. I watched, I remembered, and when the moment came, I didn't shout, I didn't strike. I just waited until they handed me the rope and pulled. Call it bad optics, say I got lucky, but that's not the story. The story is, I didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't break. I just stood still, long enough for them to show me exactly who they were. I didn't forget. I just left the door open and let justice walk in. Would you have smiled and said, that's life? Or would you have waited until the very people you fed turned around and starved you? So what would you have done, really?